Hi, I'm Melanie. I'm studying the unseen body in creative spaces, erasure and exposure of the queer.
Yeah! Hey, I'm Nina, and I studied the arts, education, and social justice.
Yeah!
I'm Joyce. I study decolonial intimacies, indigenous politics of resistance.
Yeah!
All of these people are graduating with things that don't even make sense. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I am dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this episode, we're going to talk briefly about the education system in America and how people are just using school as a form of daycare, and not just for children, but for even adults in college. I think that's actually a form of daycare these days. And so before we jump into it, I want to encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, please like, subscribe, share, and leave your comments. It certainly helps in understanding how we can be a better service to you. And if you enjoy our shows, please consider supporting us on our Patreon community. With only $5 each month, you'll get access to a lot of content. We're going to archive a lot of our content, which is not only informational, but formational. And it also gives you access to some great perks. But it most importantly helps us to continue to do what we are doing, and that's give you a show about our Catholic faith as it applies to the real world. And the real world comes very quickly when your kids have to become students. The Greek word is disciple. In this video, I'm going to just show you a very unique clip of a mother who had a child who basically had a tantrum or went on a rampage and just destroyed a classroom. And then it goes right into a clip about what teachers have to go through. And this is why I kind of want to talk to you with regards to faith, because students are supposed to be disciples. It's the same root word as discipline. And unfortunately, that's just not happening anymore. Check this out.
This is what my daughter did at school today. She did this to her whole classroom.
So when teachers are saying, please think of the other students, this is the type of stuff that they're referring to. This mom came to the school, saw the devastation her daughter created. Clearly, it's an elementary classroom. Obviously, that classroom was evacuated, and she came and took her home. So mom removed her from the setting. But look at that aftermath. The teacher and the other students in that classroom are dealing with that aftermath. They might be spending the rest of their day in a different classroom until that gets cleaned up. Or even better, the teacher has to wait till after school to go clean it up. And of course, people are very quick to say, well, what's the teacher doing? Why aren't they stopping this behavior? First off, there's not much you can do once a child gets to that point. We especially can't restrain them in any way, shape, or form. But while that kid's going on their rampage, teachers are typically catering to the other students who are probably scared and crying and trying to keep them safe. Yes, it's unfortunate about what's happening with that child because clearly they're going through something. But everyone has a right to a safe learning environment.
Okay, I completely agree, which is why in this faith aspect, I want to tell you that if your student gets to that point, if your kid gets to that point that they're acting like that kind of student, then that child should probably not be in school. They should be more disciplined at home. That's why I say, schooling is not a daycare. It's not just a time for parents to just kind of get rid of their kids. No, it's a time for them to be educated. And we need to revamp an understanding of what teachers can and can't do. I know that if that teacher tried to restrain parents would probably sue the school. That's unfortunate. Can we not create common sense laws that protect teachers and students from students who would do such harm? This is nothing. This is just desks being turned around. But what about the students who aren't fully all there and they do great violence, either with guns or with other weapons, or just their fists? Because I didn't want to show you videos of students just being brutal, physically brutal to each other. And that's why in our faith perspective, parents need to talk to their students, their children who are students, about what's expected of them. But parents, you can't just lay down an expectation and think it's going to get done. I really want to encourage parents to take a greater initiative in forming a young child before they actually enter into school itself. And why am I asking parents to deal with this? Because the Catholic Church has always said that the parents are the primary educators of faith, of morals, and even of academic things. Now, granted, you might not be as smart as the teacher in a public school, or you might be way more smart. But in reality, we've got to take care of this at a young age now, because if you don't, I guarantee you're going to have students who are going to be entitled for the rest of their educational experience, and we're going to lead to a culture that doesn't even know how to have a basic conversation. And so what I want to do now is just comment on the culture of education, not at this grade school level, but at a college level with a grade school mentality. So this is a video, and it's gone kind of viral about someone talking about the trans debate. I know that people are just about sick of it, but we can't be, because that kind of maleducation started at a grade school level when they're foisting books on kids, making kids question their identity, their own sexuality, their own gender, which is just a new word, questioning their biology. Because their psychology is so messed up, you're going to get students like this.
Like denying trans people life-saving care is a kind of rude thing to do.
Life-saving care?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so denying trans people their life-saving care is a rude thing to do.
Do you think it saves kids' lives to stop their bodies from going through puberty?
I think it does.
How come?
Because there's studies showing that, like, people who transition, who are pre-transitioning. How do I explain this?
It's okay, take your time. No pressure.
There are studies showing that children who are unable to transition, and keep in mind, most of the time they're not being given hormones at 13. They're given puberty blockers to stop them from going through what they feel is the wrong puberty. And their experience it. I don't want to have this conversation.
No. You're going to something. You want him to take it, or?
I mean, I'm going to be late to class.
Do you see? It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This person wants to get up there and try to defend prescribing hormone stopping, blocking hormone medication in children because they have questions about their identity. None of this happened even just 20 years ago. This is something that the liberal media, and I'm calling it what it is, has created this whole narrative of just sexual confusion in it. And I know that there are people who suffer from dysphoria, so please don't think I'm talking about them. I'm talking about this student who could not articulate a response. And what did they say? They're going to be late for class. Okay, yet they wanted to stop and argue and realize they couldn't. And can I tell you why? It's because students are graduating this. Now, this next video is just going to creep you out, but I want to let it play out for as long as I can possibly manage, because this is the stuff that I call babysitting. You see, oftentimes people use schools as babysitting, and then when they aren't disciplined, when they're not being treated as disciples, which means discipline, learning, then they're going to grow up like this young, I don't even know who this is, girl or boy. This person sounds like a woman, but perhaps identifies as a man. So I honestly don't care. I'm just calling this person a person, could not articulate a good response. And why? Because they had to go to class. What was this person learning? Check out this video.
Hi, my name is Nikki. I'm studying Latin American women in visual culture.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Melanie. I'm studying the unseen body in creative spaces, erasure and exposure of the queer.
Yeah! Hey, I'm Nina, and I studied the arts, education, and social justice.
Yeah!
I'm Joyce. I study decolonial intimacies, indigenous politics of resistance.
Yeah!
Victoria and I studied remembering or forgetting, navigating international conflict through collective memory.
Hi, I'm Yvonne.
That's
I
just
study monstrosity
that's
of
just
self-altering
frightening.
practices. Or should I say I created it?
All of these people are graduating with things that don't even make sense. Like, I remember in college, now I grew up going to college in the 80s. Yes, I'm that old. And in the 80s, we used to joke around, what's your major? And everyone wanted to get it done in 4 years. They just wanted to get it done. Then there were some times when you had to go a semester more, and that was like, that would kill us, to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to graduate. But then we would joke around and say, I'm taking up underwater basket weaving. That was kind of like a joke because it was just a fluff course. It didn't mean anything. We knew that you weren't going to do anything with your life if you graduated with underwater basket weaving. But this honestly is exactly what it sounds like. Underwater basket weaving. That's what this sounds like. And it is absolutely disturbing that people are actually growing up like this. So I'm just to encourage families to, first of all, really reconsider education publicly. Do some homeschooling. And before someone goes into college, don't. Put them in the mission fields. Make them missionaries. Let them actually grow up a little bit because our culture is actually stunting the education and the maturation process of young students. They don't even know who they are, clearly. And yet they're going to walk away with an expensive degree and do absolutely nothing. And they're just going to be baristas at a coffee shop making bad coffee, but pronouncing words in Italian that don't even make sense. Like, a grande means big in Italian, and yet it's like a medium for them. It makes zero sense because the education system is so flawed. We've got to pay attention. Parents, this is on you. Before your kid goes off to college, don't send them to college. Send them to work first so that they grow up. Put them on a mission. Send them on a pilgrimage, a long pilgrimage where they can actually get to know themselves better. And then maybe if they want to specialize in something like medicine, of course, like something that has to deal with, where technique and technical learning is required, then fine, go to college. But so many of these people won't be able to even account out of a paper bag. They won't even be able to. They will have no skill sets that will be helpful for them in the future. And they've just wasted all this money on the degrees that you heard. But honestly, I know what the words are. And I know what they ultimately mean. I'm going to sound smart, but I'm not going to say anything important. I'm going to have a degree which I'm going to shove in your face, but I'm really going to be basically unable to function because this degree isn't real. It's just not real. So now I want to offer some commentary and maybe suggest an alternative to schooling. Schooling really is a place where we're supposed to become disciples. True learning happens, discipline happens, the rigors of focus. And then you walk out of there with not only practical knowledge of something, but a deeper understanding of a thing. A lot of the students that you heard who are graduating really don't know anything else except for what they've been brainwashed. But anyway, I'm kind of suggesting that parents reconsider any type of education. We know the Rockefellers just wanted to create workers. The Montessori school, which comprises of maybe 1% of schooling, but that small percentage of students who are Montessori graduates have gone to do amazing things because that type of learning is not subjecting a student to just sitting there at a desk and fidgeting and freaking out when really they should be out there playing and exploring and learning. I'm going to really suggest that if you can't afford Montessori school, learn the Montessori techniques and go to homeschooling. And fine, have communities of homeschooling students. I know parents, if you have an expertise, your students, as a little neighborhood, will benefit tremendously from what you already know. And guess what? You're going to love those students as your own because they are your own. But I want to just share this story. It's a very popular story. It's the story of Gillian Lynn. Gillian Lynn is a young woman who grew up in the 30s. She was 7 years old, and her mother took her to the doctor because the school was concerned that she had a learning disorder. She was able to sit still, and they would nickname her Wriggle Bottom. Now, these days, you'd be sued for that. And this poor young girl just felt hopeless, and her teachers were exasperated, and the mother was at her wit's end. I mean, these days, they would just prescribe a bunch of medication. But back then, ADHD wasn't created yet. And when I say created, it's because these are like doctors who are in the pockets of pharmaceutical companies who say, if your kid's got the wriggle bottoms, they have ADHD, which didn't even exist in the 30s. And so now these doctors who are in the pockets of these pharmaceutical companies will say, but we've got the solution. It's these pills. Anyway, what happened is that they took her to the doctor. The doctor reviewed her, and the doctor basically was concerned about this behavior. And the doctor then said for the mom to step out. And so step out of the doctor's office in order to speak with Gillian privately. But before leaving the office, the doctor put on some music in his on the radio in his little office. And so they were talking outside. They had the door open. Gillian was in there. The doctor turned on the radio. And immediately what happened was that Gillian started to dance. She started to move. And after a while, the doctor invited Gillian's mom to come in, and she said, your daughter doesn't have a problem. There's nothing wrong with your child. She's a dancer. After which he recommended that Gillian be enrolled in a dance school. Again, this was a school specifically for Ms. Wrigglebottoms. And Gillian's mother did do that, and it was exactly what Gillian needed. She didn't need to be confined to a desk. Gillian needed to explore who she was, especially at that young age. It's okay if your kids are going crazy and running around. It's just them learning how to be them. By just forcing them into this classroom setting, which oftentimes looked like a prison, especially with teachers who most of them might be great, but a good handful of them have an agenda and they just want to not help your kids. They think that they're helping them, but in a sense, they're hurting them. But anyway, this young girl, Gillian Lynn, she enrolled in dance school and she developed a wonderful career. She was top of her class. She went to the Royal Ballet, graduated, met Andrew Lloyd Webber, and she became a choreographer for some of the most iconic Broadway shows. And guess what? She's now a millionaire. She grew up very wealthy. She has exceeded all expectations from school. I tell you this simply to encourage you to really take time to reconsider education for your kids, to not be afraid of maybe taking on homeschooling. If there's any good thing that came out of COVID is that parents started to pay attention to what their kids were not learning by sitting in and listening to some of their Zoom classes. And we realized that kids weren't learning much. But we need to let children be children. We need to let them become disciples. Yes, there needs to be discipline. But discipline to learn math is very different from disciplining them to just being attentive and being respectful and learning how to sit still when necessary. Because I can tell you that Gillian, I'm sure she sat still in a classroom at her ballet school. She learned that. But it's also a time for parents to be disciples and observe your children and learn what makes them tick, what makes them happy, what makes them excited, and then focus on those strengths. Yes, teach the basics, but let's do it not in a way that is so hardcore that if someone doesn't know fractions, that they're somehow less of a person. Now, fractions are incredibly important for things like engineering and accounting and all that stuff, and sales. But I got to tell you, like, I, as a priest, don't know how algebra necessarily helps me. Me personally, I know that math and algebra is great. In the same way, some people are going to think systematic theology, how's that going to help them? Well, guess what? That's my job as someone who studied systematics to make it applicable to them. But I don't expect them to be experts at it. I expect them to at least understand the basics of it so that it helps them to be a good person. So this episode was really all about just understanding how do we think, how do we grow, how do we mature, how do we create good discipleship in students so that they grow up not wanting to pick a fight with someone who's smarter than them and running off and saying, I got to go to class. And what class are they going to take? All of these nonsensical classes. We are losing the minds of young people starting at the earliest age, probably because parents are making them go to school as a form of babysitting. So these are my words today. I know that they're challenging, but I certainly hope they help in one way or another. I pray to God that we will all take educating our students, our children, much more seriously. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment, as well as support us on our Patreon community, where you get access to great content, but also some great perks. So thank you all for watching. God bless you, and stay hungry for God.